Welcome back to my video series about installing wiring sub-harnesses on the early 911, 912 short wheelbase stuff. Today we're going to be doing the dash, the nice cramped, tight dash area. So I promise you this will be the last time in this video that you see my ass under here. Okay, where to start with the under dash stuff? I guess the best thing to do would be to talk about the factory diagram. So this is a small version of the L57 diagram. The main stuff that we're going to be dealing with here under the dash is right in here. So you can see the factory wiring diagram is not the easiest thing in the world to read. Some of these numbers are really small. You can blow this up, which I've done, but it's just a little bit confusing. So here's another version of that diagram made by a gentleman. I'll put the link to the guy's webpage down in the comments, or down in the description, sorry. And he does a really good job. I mean, he makes this stuff readable. So, but the main thing that we're going to be talking about is the ignition switch, the light switch, the cigarette lighter, the hazard switch, and then the through body connectors, which Porsche kind of used those as the rendition for the through body connector. So this would be one, this would be one, and then there's another one over here. So, but the main thing that we're going to be looking at is the ignition switch, the light switch, the cigarette lighter, how it hooks up, and then the hazard switch. So, all right, let's get to it. So here's where we're going to start off with this stuff. These right here, what you're looking at, are the ignition switch sub-harness that's up underneath the dash that goes into the back of the ignition switch and to the light switch. So I just wanted to point these out because there are some differences here. So we've got three, obviously, and two of them are sheathed and one of them is taped. So the taped came out of a Porsche factory-built car, and then the sheathed ones came out of a Carman-built car. Now, there are differences between those. So if you look at these guys, we'll look at these two, and we'll come back to that one. But this one has bullet connectors on it. So the bullet connector has to do with the ignition switch. Some of the ignition switch had bullet connectors, like the early 356s. So, and then some of them had spade connectors. So this one has got spades on it. But yeah, so that's what they look like factory. Now, there is a couple little issues with this thing, but the main one is potentially is that the wires melt, right? And one of the wires that is particularly bad about melting is this black with blue that goes to your gauges. So it goes through this connector into the connector on the harness. So I got a harness here that's about ready to go out the door. This gentleman wanted me to reuse his old connector, so that's what you're seeing. And this guy would go in like that, right? So if it was to short anywhere in here, it could fry this connector and it could burn up some of these wires, as exactly as what happened to this one. So let's get that out of the way. We don't need that anymore. So because of that, you have to come up with new ones, right? So here are new ones, brand new ones. This is a sheathed one. This is a taped one. They do the same thing. It's just the way they look, and to keep it factory, I do them in both styles. Also do a bullet connector one. I just don't have one of those here. But that's what they look like when you make them new. So we're going to look at this one exclusively. So we just determined that that goes into this guy, right? Like so, underneath the dash. Okay. Then it's going to go into these guys. So we've got an ignition switch. Both of these are out of 67s. This is a headlight switch. So this is what they're going to go into. If you look on the back of these switches, I don't know if you can see this or not, but there's numbers. So you've got different numbers that correspond to the different pins or to the spade connectors. That's on both of them. Porsche did a really good job of putting that on pretty much everything. So you can see these. That's like that. That's a 58L. That's a 58R. That's a 56. That's a K, and so on. So that corresponds to our wiring diagram. So those are the numbers that are on the wiring diagram that tells you what wire goes to what. Looking at this, you can see that there's a couple of offshoots of this thing. So these go this way and these go over to that side. These are the ones that go to the ignition switch, and these are the ones that go to the headlight switch. We'll talk about this one in a minute. So let's deal with these that go to the ignition switch first. These three right here. If you were to look at this closely, you'd see that there's two different diameter wires here. This one is a little bit bigger than these two. So this has got a straight spade on it, and this has 90s. This one actually loops over and comes back over to the headlight switch. So we're going to worry about these two first, and then we'll get that one on there. So the yellow goes to number 50 on the back of the ignition switch. So let's find 50, and it is right there. All right. Then the red with the 90 degree goes to 15, so right there. And then the big red that's got the straight goes to number 30. So right there. So now here we are looking at the back of the light switch. So I'm going to start with these two reds. The cool thing about these two reds is they both go to 30. So that's convenient, right? So it's pretty easy to get it on the 30. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Well, easier said than done. But there we go. Okay, so then we start to just put these on as in their corresponding spots. Then we've got the white with green, and it goes to 57. And 57 is right there. Then you've got the black with blue, and it goes to what the wiring diagram says is 58B. Ugh, can't talk. 58B. But my switch has a 58, what looks like an A. Of course, my eyesight's getting pretty bad. Maybe that's some funky kind of B, but by process of elimination, the black with blue goes there. The gray with red goes to 58R. So right there. The gray with black goes to 58L. And it is right there. Then you've got one left, and it's a gray, and it goes to the K. All right, so that is what this is starting to look like, right? So we'll get to this one here in a minute. I'll go ahead and break the suspense on this one. That's a red with a black, and it's for your cigarette lighter. We'll go over that here in a few minutes. But now we have to start to get one of the combo switches, because some of the wires from the combo switch go into this stuff. So let me grab that. This is what we're starting to look like. And at this point, you want to bring in your combo switch. And this is your turn signal switch. So this is where you're going to start to hook in a couple of these wires. So these have got 3-body connectors on them too, that go into the other plugs that we were looking at earlier. Do make those, by the way, if anybody needs them. They do short out periodically, and they are made. So they are a perfect rendition of the original. They got the little lining notch in the middle right there. So, but yeah, so you're going to start to use some of these wires right here. You're not going to use these because these connect into its corresponding plug on the through-body connector. But these right here on the turn signal switch, you're going to start to use some of these. So the white with black coming from the turn signal switch goes to number 56 on the light switch. All right, so we've got that right there. Then we've got these other two wires. We've got a gray and a red. So this is where Porsche gets a little weird on their wiring diagram versus what is on the switch. So the gray in the wiring diagram shows that it's going to go to 57A. But my switch doesn't have a 57A. It's got a PA. But it does go to the PA. So you take the gray and you plug it in there. And then the red goes to the same as the big red coming off of here, which is 30. So it plugs in like so. So there you have it. Pretty much everything except for the cigarette lighter stuff, which we'll go over here in a second. But that's the way it looks. So on the dash, you got your ignition switch and your headlight switch beside each other. And that's the way that guy looks. Now this would plug into your other 3-body connector. And you've also got a horn, a brown with a white, and that goes to your horn connection on your horn. Then we have the wiper switch. So it's just like the other switch. It's got its little corresponding ends that go through the 3-body connector. But this one has two wires on it that just kind of hang out there in space. Both of them are red. One is red with a black, and then one is red with a white. And then it also has a ground wire. So let's talk about these three separate items. So the red with the black is for the cigarette lighter. So you have to remember that this thing is going to be sitting in the car kind of like this. It's going to be up here connected near the other through body connectors. So this red with the black is going to be very close to this little pigtail that is coming off of the ignition pigtail, right? So it connects to its little WECO connector here, the WECO 404, and provides power to the other end of this, which this goes to the cigarette lighter. And here it is. So it's got its little spade on there for the power, and then it normally would have a U-shaped bracket that would have a little ground tab on the bracket. I don't have that bracket handy, but you would connect the red with the black into the end of it, and then you would take the long end of the ground here, right, and it would go onto the bracket. Now the other end of this brown goes up into the clamshell and grounds the horn. So if you look inside the clamshell, there's a little tab for ground. I'll post a picture of it here, and you'll be able to see that. So this would connect to that tab. So that would complete your cigarette lighter circuit. I do want to talk about the fact that there's two ways that this cigarette lighter could ground. Remember, we've got this U-shaped bracket that's holding it onto the dash, and that U-shaped bracket has a little tab that comes off for the ground. So we saw this ground right here that goes to the horn, or to the clamshell to ground the horn, and then goes over to the cigarette to ground too. But there's also another way to do that. Let me get some of this stuff out of here. So this is one that has the ground circuit pretty much self-contained. So this would go into the hot to the cigarette lighter, and then that would go to the bracket, right? And then this little guy right here, it goes up to a ground bracket that is on the body of the car. So I'll post a picture of it here in just a second. And both the Carmen cars and the Porsche cars have that ground bracket. So just know that if you have a ignition sub-harness like this, and it has a ground wire like that, then that's what that's for. Now, let's talk about the radios, because this is kind of a weird thing. I do want to go back and show you one thing. So on the ignition switch, let's go ahead and get this out of here. So on the ignition switch, there is a red with a white wire that comes out of connector number, I think it's 54. Yeah, number 54, that would be for the radio, okay? Now, Porsche, I don't know why they exactly did this way, but this provides power for a radio, right? But on that pigtail that we just had up there, they have a red with a white right here, right? But the weird thing is this red with a white goes through the through body connector, and then it just ends. Let me show you that real quick. So here's the through body connector, and it just ends in space out by the fuse panel. So I don't really know why Porsche did that. I don't know if they wanted you to get power from here and then run it through here, maybe through another WECO 404 connector, and provide power out here if you needed to power the radio from the trunk area. But the radio hangs down on the inside passenger's compartment, so this would provide power directly to the radio without having to go through this circuit. So not really sure. If you know exactly why Porsche did it that way, please post it in the comments or send me an email directly. I'd like to know. So that's that. Let's move on to the hazard switch and the emergency flasher switch. So this has got 4 connections on the back. It's actually 5 because there's a light in the middle. And they're labeled on the back of the switch. It's pretty simple on this one. It's 1, 2, 3, and K, right? So number 1 gets the white with red. So we will put it there. All right, there's white with red. Number 2 gets the ground. So number 2, oh goodness, my eyes are not so good anymore. So it goes there. And then the black with white, and I want to talk about that. The black with white goes to K. Okay, we'll come back to that black with white because that can be confusing. But then there's a brown wire that would go from number 3 up to the bulb. So when you pull the switch, there's a little light that would come on. So that's what powers that. Okay. Now, so about this black with white, on the wiring diagram, it comes across as, I think it's blue with yellow. It's not blue with yellow. I don't know why Porsche put that on the wiring diagram, but I've never seen one. Every picture I've ever seen, this wire is always black with a white. So if you're looking at the wiring diagram and you see a blue with yellow, it's wrong. So that's it. That's it for this episode. Of course, I didn't go into the gauges or any of the thing like that because that's completely separate. I'll do a video on that. But this is pretty much everything that's under the dash. I mean, this technically is not under the dash. This is on the end of the wiring harness, but it's a switch that's up on the dash, so that's why I included it in this one. It's definitely not a gauge, but yeah, thanks. Appreciate you. Hey, hit subscribe if you want to see the next video. Hit like if you liked it. I appreciate your time, and see you on the next video. Thank you.